All right, today we're looking at the jointer. In our shop we have two. We have a 6-inch jointer, which means it has a 6-inch wide bed and a 6-inch wide set of blades, which means it can cut 6 inches wide of material flat. We have an 8-inch jointer, which means the table is 8 inches wide. It has an 8-inch set of blades, and it's capable of cutting an 8-inch wide piece of material. Parts on the jointer include the power switch, outfeed lock, outfeed adjustment handle, the bed of the machine, in this case the outfeed table, the fence, the infeed table, the infeed height adjustment, or lock, sorry, the infeed table adjustment, the scale for the height of the infeed table. We use a North American spring guard. This is the lock for adjusting the position of the fence. And this is the lock for adjusting the angle of the fence. When using a jointer, it's a very special machine in the shop. This is the only machine in the shop that's actually capable of making things flatter. Most machines in the shop are a parallel machine, which means if I put a flat surface against the fence or the table, then I will get a flat surface out. But if I put a surface on it that's not flat, I will get an equally parallel surface out, where the jointer is actually meant to flatten wood. The way this works is the infeed table is set to be a 1/16 of an inch or 1.5 millimeters lower than the outfeed table. The outfeed table is set to be the exact same height as the blade of the machine. So as the board goes over from the infeed table, it removes the distance between these two tables, and the new flat surface is held in place on the outfeed table, creating a flat surface. A couple passes off, we'll usually get rid of any cups, bow, twist, crown that we have in our boards and make them flat before going on to a parallel machine that will then make it even thickness everywhere. So jointers are a very special machine in that they actually flatten wood. Now, the jointer is the first of the machines that we look at that uses a head. So we've looked at the table saw and the miter saw, who use circular blades. This uses a head assembly. So the head has 3 blades mounted in it and spins, which means when this machine is operating, running somewhere around the 10,000 RPM range, it makes around 30,000 cuts a minute. So you want to be careful around it, because this is not a machine that's going to leave a clean cut. It's going to remove material very aggressively, and there is no chance of reattachment if there is a cut from this. So you always want to be very careful around the machine. When you first come to the machine, check a couple things. The spring guard, to make sure it moves freely. It doesn't happen very often, but every so often you'll get a knot bounce in, and it will lock the guard up. Or it can bounce up on the inside and leave the guard open. Either way is not good. So either way, we can either not push our material through, or the spring guard will not close after the material has gone through. Anytime I want to use a machine, I want to observe the 3 P's. I want to make sure I have permission, personal protection, and eye protection. So I want to make sure that for the personal protection, which is always a little different for each machine, I want to be aware of a couple things. No loose sleeves. I want to make sure anything around my hands and wrists are tight. I want to make sure I have nothing dangling that can get caught on the machine. No pendants, no headphones, no necklaces, no hoodie strings. I want to make sure my shirt is tucked in, at least at the front, so there's no chance it's going to get caught on a board. I want to make sure there's nothing dangling that's going to get caught, which is normal for most pieces of machinery. But for the jointer, you also want to make sure that your shoes are tied. As you're working with the jointer, you're going to be moving your feet along with the cut. Notice I'm doing a very simple shuffle. I want to keep my weight as close to balanced in the same place as I push through. but I want to make sure there's no chance I'm going to trip myself up, as tripping onto the blade of this machine could be disastrous. So 3 P's in this case. Personal protection also has to include your footwear to make sure that you are not going to have any issues when you're moving along. The other thing to check periodically is to make sure that the fence is actually square. It is possible for it to get knocked out of square. However, there are times when working with long miter joinery, we may choose to flatten a surface by jointing it at an angle. So it is always a good idea, or regularly a good idea, to check to make sure the fence is indeed at 90 degrees. There are 3 types of push sticks that we recommend for the jointer. This one is for doing large flat surfaces like your face side. This one is for doing large pieces of wood or smaller pieces that are pushing through for your face edge. And this piece, or this one, I recommend for holding the front down if it's longer than this. So if I'm doing a long piece, if it's a shorter piece that fits underneath this, I would just use the long push stick. Or if I'm working with a narrow piece, trying to keep it tight to the fence, then I would use this push stick at the back and this push stick at the front to keep it tight and square to get a 90-degree corner. All 3 push sticks serve safety purposes. We want to keep our hands away from the blade assembly at all times, which means if for some reason my board were to disappear while I was pushing through, the push stick buys me a very large safety factor before it can possibly get to my hand. So this would be a good setup. As you can see, my hands are a long way away from the blades. This is a good safe setup. With the large push stick, it's less likely to end up tilting into there, so I would be basically just holding this like this if something went wrong. So I always want to start with a face side. Face side is the largest area possible. So I would want to do a face side and then a face edge. It's safer and easier for me to do a face side and hold that against the fence than it is for me to do a face edge and then try and hold this square against the fence. So I always want to do the larger surface first. Boards must be at least 12 inches long to go through the jointer. Smaller than that, they had a habit of vibrating and getting out from underneath the push stick, and if that happens, they can shoot back. For that same reason, we always want to make sure that we never back out of a cut, as we are going to help it kick back if that were to happen. So like any machine, I'm working against the direction of the kickback. Like most machines in the shop, if I have both my hands holding a piece safely, I would want to do that even if I get stuck. I can shut the power off with my knee on the jointer. So if this was running and something went wrong, I can hold my hands in place to keep the piece safe and then use my knee to shut the power off, let the machine come to a complete stop before checking anything, and then we can figure out what happened and how to deal with it. So I will start with a face side. So my face side is now my largest flat surface possible. I'm going to flip this to the fence so that I can now do a face edge. I'm going to use one at the front to hold it tight and square, and one at the back to push it through. That should give me my first 90-degree corner. a flat face side and a flat face edge. From here, there should be no gaps on either of these surfaces, which means it's now ready to go on to either become a flat surface for our machine or for our project, or join to another piece to become a nice square, clean joint that we can use for anything else that we want it to be. In the case of a larger piece, I need to make sure that it'll fit on the table. So I'm going to adjust this back to make sure I have the entire board on the table. Again, I'm going to switch to be my flat face side push stick, and I'm going to use the same push stick I used before to hold the front of the board down to make sure it doesn't want to bounce around while I'm working with it. So there's a flat face side now, as opposed to what that used to be. If I put this on the machine here, you can see there's now no rock on the board. So that's now been flattened out. For a piece that is taller than the fence, I can do the no fingers rule, which means I'm going to roll my hands up into knuckles, so there's no fingers exposed, to do this pass. Now, the reason I do that at all is if I attempt to use push sticks on this, it has a habit of pushing away from the fence. So if I was trying to do this, you can see it wants to come away from the fence. So I'm going to roll my fingers up so there's no fingers exposed, just my knuckles. And because my hand is not as long as the fence, that means that I should be safe to do this cut. It gives me more control. As you can see, I put my pressure against the fence to keep the board square and straight. Corner, flat face side, flat face edge. There's my two reference edges to make everything else parallel to. Whenever using the joiner, make sure that you have the dust collection system on. As it produces large, wide curls, it can clog up very quickly. So make sure whenever you go to use the joiner, you have the dust collection system running to help prevent that from clogging up.